This week's episode of the Marianne Hickman Show is done with the one and only Jacia Kornwise. We met down in San Diego just a few months ago, and when I saw her take the stage and immediately this amazing woman starts dancing, my first thought to myself was, we have to be friends. Dance is part of my bloodstream. It is part of my soul. And this woman teaches how dance actually is a mechanism to overcome and recover from traumas, and not just yours, generational traumas. So in this episode, we're going to talk about exactly how that works. And also, she brings up a study done by the University of California, Berkeley, that shows a dramatic increase in recovery using dance for people that went through trauma and distress. We also talk about her book, The Love Ball Game. You might want to stay tuned because I know she's publishing another one. I won't give away the title just yet. But enjoy this episode with Jacia Kornwise. Stay tuned. So I loved meeting you in person. When we met down at the Tag Talks event, you stuck out to me in such a beautiful way. Your smile, your vivaciousness, and especially when you were on stage, because so many times speakers will get on stage and they will forget to engage their audience, and they'll forget who they're there for. They think that they're there to tell their story. And a lot of times people think that they have been trained that way. But in reality, we're there to serve the audience, and we're there to get the audience moving. And you did that. You did that so wonderfully, getting us to move, getting us to dance, getting us to just feel something. And that stuck out to me in such a beautiful way. And then I got your book and started reading it. And like, I'm on the treadmill and I'm going through this roller coaster of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. And oh my gosh, did you really just say that? And how can all of these things happen in just a few beginning formidable years of someone's life? I was blown away. And then, like I said, yesterday when we were chatting, to meet you in person, this is what I love about you. To meet you in person, you would never know that that's the past that you came from. You're already a diamond. You've already been through the cuts. You've already been through the pressure. You've already been through the heat of life, the heat and pressure that makes diamond, and you have emerged as a beautifully faceted gem. And not everyone does that. And here's the thing that I believe most people miss is that that's very intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen without preparation. It doesn't happen without coaching. It is very intentional, and you've done that so elegantly. So I'm glad that you're here today.
Oh my God, it's like the most heartwarming, beautiful welcome I could ever imagine. I'm gonna be granted my talk and very engaging because, the cheaters is that speaking, they're being really in the big stages only for about a year now, but I've been teaching people forever. And when I first got on the TEDx was my first speaking, like big speaking engagement. And, I'm a little bit of story, oh, well, if I wanted to speak, I'm going to go and use the audience that are really appreciative of yourself. That's my engagement.
It was very clear. It was very clear. I'm about to sneeze. I'm trying to get through this sneeze that's coming. If I can, it'll be a big win.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I think it left. Oh, okay. Your microphone got a little bit further away from your mouth than it was a second ago. So
It fell off.
oh, there it goes.
It drops to the floor. Let's stick it right here.
I love it. It's raw. It's
Is that
authentic.
better?
It's beautiful. I love it. What's up, Marianne Hickman here? Hey, listen, I'm about to give you my phone number, so write this down. 801-509-5495. I want you to text me. What questions do you have about the stage or getting on more stages or getting on podcasts? What questions do you have about monetizing your message and bringing in clients? I want to help you make money with your message. So text me 801-509-5495. Let's chat. Okay. So your modality is to teach people through movement and through dance how to overcome trauma. And the reason I am so curious about this and I love this so much is not only because I fell in love with the dance very early on, like acro yoga, dance, interpretive dance, all this, but more and more and more, I am finding that that is becoming a widely adopted modality. I was just chatting with a couple of friends of mine last week, and they're using the same modality, but they're focused on overcoming addiction. So how did you like, have you always been a dancer? Did you happen upon it? What it's like part of your DNA.
Such
How
a
did that come
great
about?
question because I've never been a dancer, meaning I've never studied dance, but I always loved to move. And I trained as a psychotherapist and as a coach. But on the side, my passion was dancing. I loved it, but I wasn't really good being born blind in my left eye. I was never good at following other people's steps. And so I'd always get frustrated with that. But if you put on music, I would just want to move. And I've been doing that since I was little, loved it. And I always dreamed that dance would be something for me. And I found though that with all the different traumas I went through, that I'd be not only offering therapy and coaching, but I was, as you said, it was very intentional. In my life, I started on a path of receiving psychotherapy and coaching since I was 19 years old. And it just never stopped. And I got very involved in all sorts of self growth, intention, mindset, tools, movements to develop myself. But the dance, what I kept coming back to is no matter how much trauma, therapy, coaching I got, if I wasn't using my dance practice, I was not breaking through and I was not coming back to joy. And I just saw it. And then I eventually started teaching it in my early 20s. I called it the rhythms of acceptance and I started bringing my therapy clients into this. And that came from my boyfriend that I met a few years back was in a band. And he's like, you should come dance on stage. And so I started dancing with this band on the side. I mean, I was always dancing. And then I realized people started saying, we want to learn to dance like you. And I was like,
No
I
kidding.
don't know how to dance. You need to learn to dance like yourself.
Mm.
And that's when it hit me is like, oh, I help people free up to become who they really are. And that's how I use dance is to like break through inhibition, stuck points, and just find the joy of just being authentically you, falling
Ugh.
in love with yourself. And
And
that,
that is so
I-
powerful because that's I mean, everyone has seen dance halls. And everyone has, at least as a teenager in my culture, it was a big thing to have like weekly or monthly dances available for the kids. And you know what it was? A bunch of wallflowers who weren't moving, afraid to get out there. The boys were too afraid to go over to the girls. The girls were waiting for the boys who were too afraid, and they wouldn't even say yes anyway half the time. And then there was like the crazy kids who were like two or three of them, and maybe 10 if you were lucky, in the middle of the floor. And it was like that for an hour and a half. That's what people generally think of, at least me speaking for myself, in the early days when I thought of dance.
yes. And that you can make a right move or a wrong move, or only the cool and pretty people got to dance. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
grew up. Did you ever watch that show, Strictly Ballroom?
Oh, yeah.
Love that show. It was my favorite Australian show before Bluey came out. But anyhow, like that's what if you weren't that,
Yeah.
you weren't a dancer. And none of us traditionally get there, much less on a weekly or monthly basis.
Yeah. Well, and that's like I always like to tell people, no, I'm not a dancer. I'm a person who uses dance to help people become whole in themselves and transform triggers and trauma and stress and grief and like land in their bodies and fall in love with themselves. And it's actually scientifically proven that dance, like now more than ever, we're actually understanding that somatic movement and dance is like 98% more effective than almost anything else
No
for
kidding.
trauma and stress. Yeah.
So
That's
talk me through the
so
science of it. Use your word somatic movement. First of all, what is that? And then walk me through the science of dance.
So, um, using conscious intentional movement and release from the body. And then the studies that have been shown were on specifically dance. There's different studies using like any kind of dance versus freeform movement. But in 2021, the University of California in Berkeley did a study on over 1,000 freeform conscious dancers who had histories of trauma, anxiety, and depression, clinical histories, mind you, and it significantly improved 98% of them, which is mind blowing. It brought them release from stress, release from depression, release from anxiety, feeling more optimistic about life, being more compassionate with themselves and others. And so I always knew that. I mean, if you think about it, we can use dance throughout all time
Mhm.
for war, for pride, for grief, for prayer, right? To move through big feelings and tough stuff. I've certainly been using it since I was little. I was like, I was just taking rock and whatever I could do to just I didn't even know what I was doing. I was trying to find myself again, against a world that's telling you to be something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a science that trauma is stored, and not just trauma, stress, memories are held in the body.
And that's been proven. And sometimes, even if you don't think you have like a trauma, we all have stress, right? In our
Yeah.
busy lives, and we have to just put things away. And sometimes we put away our own instincts and our own intuition because we've been taught we have to do something else. And when you focus on freeform dance, which is kind of not following steps and rules, but really listening from within, you really start to understand what it is that you've been pushing aside, and it asks you and invites you to listen to it more and more and move with it. And suddenly you're freeing up parts of yourself that you haven't even expressed before. And it's fun.
So this is what's crazy. So in your book, you talk a little bit about the body being a vessel, which I 100% believe. I mean, if anyone think this is woo woo crazy, just ask yourself this question: do you get a headache when you're stressed? And if you do, your body's carrying it and manifesting it. Where do you keep your stress in your body? I keep mine in my traps. Girl, my traps are freaking huge. They're bigger than my husband's. You can see, oh my gosh, I carry my traps on my stress in my traps.
Yeah,
So it's true. And we carry these feelings with us, and not just negative feelings. We carry positive feelings with us
that's
too.
right.
I saw this study that was done, and the study of water went
Mm.
to study of tears. I'm sure you've heard the Dr. Masurimoto, if I'm pronouncing his
Yeah,
name.
Masumoto. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
he did a study on water, and there's a similar parallel study done on the biology and the molecular structure of tears.
Here's, yes.
Did you hear about this one too?
Well, it's connected in sweat. I mean, it's sweat, tears, water, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
all makes sense. It's a line. Go ahead.
And use it like Disney even picked on it, how in the Frozen movies they're like water remembers. I'm like, oh, see, you're teaching.
There it
That's
is.
good.
There it
So
is.
like you can tell by looking at the molecular structure of a tear, you can see if they were crying for happiness, they were crying for betrayal, they were crying out of loneliness, they were crying out of joy. So yeah, our body carries these things. And when we express them through dance, I believe it can shake things loose and process them. Kind of like, I don't know if you've ever used a food processor and it only processes that one layer, then there's that one film at the bottom that never gets touched, right?
Yeah, this gets the layer at the bottom.
It does.
Exactly.
And so here's what I loved about your book is that you talked about not only how our bodies are the vessels, which I wholeheartedly believe in, but you also talked about generational stuff. And this is where some people will be like, that's crazy, that's woo woo. My parents are long, or my grandparents or great grandparents are long gone. But here's where I put this on a scientific perspective and say, oh, there might be something here. When in your book, you talked about mapping out your family tree. And then you said, did your ancestors, and maybe not even that far back, maybe people that you met and know, did they go through war? Well, anyone that was alive in the 40s did. Did they go through stress? Did they go through betrayal? Did they go through this? And whether or not you believe it's mapped on your DNA, which I do believe, but whether or not you believe that, the behaviors, which is what you talk about, get passed down.
I mean, think about how many times you'll meet someone and then you'll meet their parents and you'll see certain postures, their physical body, they walk the same way, neck goes the same way, there's certain gestures. We literally take on whatever we've learned until we become who we really are. And and if we don't search and sort through what's in us that was put into us by virtue of what we inherited versus who we want to be, and that choice, we literally often carry the same genetic disease patterns, dispositions, structural decompensation, all of that. And that can change with awareness. And the awareness comes from getting inside ourselves. And it's so easy in this world to even when we're doing movement to look outside ourselves. We copy repetitions of, reps at the gym. I'm not against the gym, love the gym, but I'm just saying there's a difference between exercise for an external goal versus listening in and moving to free up where we're at. I mean, I have saved myself so many backaches and neck aches by doing
Mhm.
my body parts practice every morning. It's one of my personal physical practices that I teach, and it literally unwinds the tension. And if I had just gone into my day and kept on my repeat posture or energy, it would have gotten more entrenched. But because I listen and I move it, it softens, and all of a sudden I feel so much better. And I look up.
So walk us through the science of this. First of all, how do you map out and how do you observe without judgment what's going on? Because once we judge it, we want to tuck it away and hide it, and that defeats the purpose. So what is your process for helping someone, let's say they're listening right now? Like, how do you read your own body?
That is a really big question. We're to get up on this one to start moving around.
Good to go.
What? Well, it depends how someone's coming to work with me, but I have actual tools and courses and videos so that people can actually learn with me how to do that. And I also, do one-on-one stuff. But my work isn't just movement. It's because I feel like we need all of it. We need the breath, we need the movement, we need the mindset, we need a compassionate listener, awareness of because we can't always see. If we could get through all of our stuff alone, we'd be living here in our own caves. Like we were born together to help each other out. And sometimes we can see something better than someone else because we're trained to. So, but falling in love with your body, like not judging it, is a lot about accepting our emotions that are within them. Because the judgment, often we think it's a physical thing. We're like, oh, I hate this. Why do you hate this? What story do you carry? Like, I can't tell you how many women will be like, I hate my hips or I
Mm.
hate my belly. And as we go deeper into it, well, we start to unrail, take it a level deeper, a level deeper. Why do you hate your belly? What beliefs there? Who's inside there? Who told you that? What did they have? Who were you before that? And suddenly we find the innocence of just a structure that's gotten taken off. And rather than self-hate or judgment, we start to grieve. And then from release and grief or anger, maybe it's anger. We have to get angry and then we grieve. And then, from there, there's an opening that happens and we start to fall in love with our inherent self, which also brings permission for change. Not necessarily that we need to change, but it's not change coming from you're wrong because we all resist. If someone's like, there's something wrong with you and you get told that over and over again, you're going to freeze up there.
Mhm.
But if you start realizing there was nothing wrong, then you can start being kinder to yourself. So it actually opens kindness.
So I really like that perspective of improving yourself because you love yourself rather than improving yourself because you hate what you see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really dancing from the inside out. Like, and believe me, it's not like we don't all enjoy visual beauty and want to, it's natural in this world to want to show up in a way that people are going to love us. But the most important thing is there's so many people out there who look like supposedly they're supposed to look and they're absolutely miserable because they don't love themselves.
Yeah.
And love from within will radiate so much more beauty than an external beauty ever does if there isn't a real, I'm looking for the word, like a cognitive match between how you feel and
Right. I agree with that. I wanted to bring up an idea and a concept because it's very popular culturally right now. And I was just listening to the Modern Wisdom podcast about an hour ago, and they were talking about a big weight loss revolution that's happening right now. And there was another one about 20 years ago and all this. So we do this in waves. And they brought up a couple of things, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. The first thing that they brought up is that we have an obesity epidemic, which everyone knows about. And this ties together with the self-love versus the self-hatred thing. And they said, why don't you go back to Google and look up beach photos from the 1960s? And if you do, nobody is obese.
right.
You notice that? Like that nobody's obese. And now we've swung in this crazy direction where this self-love and self-acceptance could argue that it's been taken too far. Meaning there's a 500-pound person who says they love themselves and all of their chunks and rolls and weight and things, and I can't bring myself to believe that. What is your perspective on that?
I think that that's a really complex issue because, someone who may be at that large of a size, maybe they're saying, I love myself is their way of sending love and compassion for what happened to them. They might not be speaking from the layer you're talking about of a more actualized self-love that might be like, okay, so if I love myself, I want to take better care of my body. So it literally feels better to walk, right? Or it literally feels better to breathe. But it may be that claiming, there's such a out there, we need to love ourselves, right? So people are grabbing onto this thing sometimes as an excuse. So it may be more of an external response.
Right, right.
Maybe like a really deep internal. It may be so incredibly hard for that person to take the steps. They might be completely, it could be genetic. It's hard to know what's really going on there. But I understand your point. I think what you're really asking is like, can we love ourselves and be treating ourselves poorly at the same time? I don't.
That's really it.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think if I'm gonna look at someone and hear them say, "I love myself," in the same breath that they're shoving Twinkies down in there,
Right.
one of us is lying.
Right. Unless they like have an association. Well, right. I know what you're saying. If it's Twinkies all day long, 24/7, like just shove a few Twinkies in there, great. Let them have their Twinkies. Like we all have our
Right.
little treat, right? But if it's nothing but Twinkies ever, yeah, there's probably something
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. And here's the
Yeah.
thing, like, and I think about this with movement too. Use it or lose it. Humans are meant to move. We are meant to be active human beings. I'll never forget, when I was born, my grandfather had had a stroke around the same time. So I never knew him as someone who was able to talk,
Yeah.
and he lived for 20 more years without the use of half of his body.
Mm.
And I watched that half of his body. I remember holding his hand one time, the hand that he hadn't been using for 15 years, and the fingerprints were just about gone. It was crazy to see. So and it's because it wasn't able to move,
Right.
couldn't move it. And then there was a level of frustration that he couldn't, and it was very difficult for him. So just with that example, I'm like, yeah, we're meant to be moved. We're meant to be active. We're meant to see these amazing 80-year-olds who are winning like Ironman competitions and all these amazing things.
Fine.
And a friend of mine just became a lymphatic massage therapist
Uh-huh.
because the lymph system starts to deteriorate just for the lack of movement, right?
Right.
So my question for you is, medicinally, how do you feel like this movement is treating the body in conjunction with the trauma that we're trying to heal?
I think movement is, I mean, all you have to do is come look at my classes. Half of the women who I have worked with through the years have been, are now in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they're still moving around, experiencing freedom and release. Like I worked with people younger than me and older than me because I started when I was young. So a lot of people who are older, and it's beautiful. I watch these people and they're so inspiring to me. Um, they literally continue to heal through movement and through micro movement. Um,
Mhm.
I think it is super inspiring to watch elders who can do that. And I do believe that when we find, it's funny, I injured myself from over dancing and being like
Really?
athletic. And like, you can, there's genetic dispositions. I've injured my feet at different points. And I went in to get an x-ray and the guy's like, you have the feet of like an arthritic 80-year-old, but really you have the feet of a major athlete. He's like, because you've been so hard on them. And so it's a paradox, right? But what's interesting is they're not bothering me anymore. And I think I was going through a really hard time emotionally at that time, transitioning. So at the moment I thought, oh, that's what happened. It was biology. I just hit them too hard. But I'm looking at myself now and not having any of those problems. And that was a moment when I was transitioning from one part of my career to stepping up into this next level of really sharing my stories in a much larger way with the world and reaching out through all this online stuff and connecting with a much larger audience ready to step up. And sort of in that transition between was when I was having a lot of pain. And the feet are, symbolically, they're like your next steps. They're like walking. And mine were just beat up from maybe being stuck in the same step. There's a lot of metaphors and ways to look at it. But I do think that our bodies are also constant metaphors. And so, there's all sorts of possibilities when we embrace that inside healing and what a body piece represents and care for it. It's like hire Pamela Ann God. It's like do both. Care for the body, do what's necessary, but don't necessarily take everything as fact because we're so much more complex, rich, deep, internal beings, and we have so much power over our energy system and possibility when we love ourselves up and listen to what's being told to us. And it's often when we're disconnected that we injure ourselves.
Oh, that phrase right there. It's often when we're disconnected, dislocated, maybe.
Yeah, we do that too. Yeah.
Ah.
Remember one breakup where I had the most excruciating, what is it called when your neck gets like twisted and tweaked and it went into my, a nerve. I had the
Oh,
most
ooh.
extreme nerve pain for like a month and a half. It was horrible. And it was all about me not being willing to know. My head knew what I had to do. My heart didn't want to. A relationship was ending. And until I surrendered, that nerve pain was not going to go away. When I surrendered, it was gone.
Do you
You
think
know,
we can avoid a lot of surgeries if we knew what the body was holding on to? And
I
yes, I'm
do.
not gonna
I
poo-poo on,
do.
you know,
I
all
do.
surgeries, but
Yeah, I'm not anti-medical, but at the same time, I do believe that the more tuned in we are with what's going on inside of us, meaning the more we're living from inside our bodies, not the external formula. There's so many people, it's like, if you do this, this, and this, eat these things, go to the gym, da, 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 then you'll be right. You might be physically right, but if you're emotionally still running from following other people's orders and trying to fit in, you're still going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But when
I
you're
think
actually listening to yourself, I think your health vibrates in a whole different way.
that's a big deal. And I think when you say that, listening to yourself, I know for me, early on, that was so hard because I didn't know which version of myself was doing the talking. Was it my doubt?
Bingo.
Was it my highest and best? Was it an intruder? How do you know? Like, and how many of us struggle with this self-trust issue?
Oh my gosh. Have you watched my tag talk? It was like my second, the one, not that one, but the first one I did.
I didn't watch the video. I just watched you live.
Okay. The strike out or listen in talk, which was like the premiere of why I wrote the Love Ball game. So
Yeah.
it was all about hearing voices and not knowing what to listen to and how my body knew, but I didn't want to listen. And that's exactly it. It's a journey because we are taught to look outside of ourselves, and to hear, to like, we literally are told because we're programmed by whoever's around us and we follow those orders. It's just natural. But sometimes the people around us might not understand something or might have their own thing that they've been fending off. So they feed you the same defense coping mechanism and something inside you's been, but that's not right, but that's not right. But you start to not hear yourself because you want to be a good girl or a good boy or fit in. And then there's a certain moment where you're like, wait a second, it's not feeling right here. And it's a very scary moment to actually trust yourself more than what you've been fed. You know?
You're speaking to my heart right now because I know I've gone through that more than once.
Oh
By
my
the
gosh.
Because you're right, we become I'm a big believer in the power of proximity that we become the assimilation of the top 5 people we spend our time with, which
100%.
is why I'm such a huge advocate for spending time alone.
Yes, me too.
Not to
That's
be
so good.
lonely,
That's a great line to follow with that. It's perfectly said. Yes.
I wanna know who this person is.
Yeah.
I wanna know what I value. I'm the one I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with, so yeah, I wanna know who I'm hanging out with, and do I like it?
And it's so great that you do. I mean, so many people avoid, being alone. It's such an uncomfortable thing. It's one of the primary things we need to do to be able to listen to ourselves is to be willing to be alone. And we're often afraid of that because that means we need to feel things we might not want to face or look at. But often we start to find that when we trust in looking and we start to see that it's okay to hear ourselves, we become our best company, we become our best friend, and everything beautiful stems from that because you build relationships that actually resonate rather than ones that are based on avoiding yourself.
Oh, it's so much easier to say no, thank you, or no, not right now. You're
Yeah.
100% right. And let me ask you this. I think I know the answer, but you teach breath work,
I teach breathwork and
right?
dance, do coaching. Yeah.
So the breath work portion of it, speaking of learning to be alone, for me, when I participated in breath work, it has been some of the most poignant ways to discover what's happening in the vessel. It's usually in a room with other people, but I feel very in tune with just myself. Tell me about your process.
Yeah. Breathwork. I did my first breathwork session as a young person. I started, I think I was like 21. And I was terrified because I started believing that I didn't know how to breathe. I like went into this whole mindset, like I'm doing it wrong. I'm breathing wrong. So I spent like the first 20 minutes of the session just like fighting myself half hour. Like I can't do it. I'm doing it wrong. And then I realized that was what I told myself about everything is I must be doing it wrong. I must not know how to, which was so ridiculous. Of course I knew how to breathe. It's the most natural in the world, right? But I believe there was some way I'm supposed to be doing it that wasn't natural to me because that's what I learned, look outside, and it blew my mind, and I had a very challenging but mind-blowing first session, and that's what propelled me to just keep doing it and doing it. I, it wasn't my favorite thing, but I
It
knew
was so hard.
yeah, I knew I needed to do it, and it got me, through a lot of emotion because, the way I teach it and the way I was taught it, and there's a couple different ways I've done it, but, it's blindfolded, eyes closed on your back or, masked. And so it's an internal journey. You're going inward. And That's probably one of the first times. I mean, I've done meditation retreats as well, but but you can stay really in your head in meditation retreats if it's just a soft breath. But when you're doing this, you're going to go inside. I always tell my students that we pass inward, we pass out. Or it would be like passing out, but we pass inward.
Oh, what a cool mental image that paints.
Yeah, we pass inward.
Okay, and I wanted to ask this because, and I'm going to shift gears for a second with your permission. So,
Yeah.
when we first
We
met,
could talk forever.
oh, I know we could keep. Probably into part 2. When we first met, it wasn't until the day we said goodbye that I noticed what you talk about in your book, which is in reference to what you call your baby eye.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, because you know what? My husband Richard, who was there, he didn't even know until he read the beginning of your book. He's like, I sat face to face with her, and I didn't even notice this. I want to hear a little bit about the backstory of what it is and the breakthroughs that you've had surrounding it.
Yeah. So I was born blind in my left eye, which is called a microthallus, which is means a baby eye.
Uh-huh.
But essentially, I grew up, the first imprint you get when you're blind in your eye, whether your parents mean to or not, they love you, but they're going to look with concern, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just natural. Who wouldn't? Your baby
Who
has
wouldn't?
something
I would think
wrong, right? We all would.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you love them, it doesn't mean you don't love. But so imagine that's the initial thing is I get anxiety imprinted into me. And I already come from a family with a lot of anxiety. And I get the extra portion.
So you're getting it fed to you in utero, and then with the
Bro. And then,
you, they're like,
and then witnessing by everybody. And then you get the kids going, what's wrong with you? Something's wrong with your eye. Is there something in your eye? What happened to your eye? So
what was elementary school like?
it was, and my parents put me in these big, thick glasses. They were afraid, of course, that I would hurt my right eye and then I'd have no eyes. So they
Yeah.
and then I looked like a huge nerd. So I had these really thick glasses. And then they made the glass bigger on my left eye, thinking it would magnify it, look more normal. Well, it looked crazy.
Oh my God.
This cute little girl got these horrible glasses, and I was already feeling like there's something wrong with me. So, it got to hit double time.
That belief keeps popping up. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me.
Something wrong with me. Something wrong with me. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I started there. We all get that belief somewhere.
We do.
Mine started super heavy-handed early, but eventually, so it was challenging. You feel like you're not going to get loved. There's a very, people like even symmetrical looks. So I just wasn't going to have, I was just not going to win in the game of love. All the stories, all things, that get poured down onto you about, oh yeah, I couldn't be on a stage. I couldn't be on a screen. I would never be in the public eye because I didn't have the kind of face I saw on TV I wanted to be a Mickey Mouse Musketeer, I was like those girls.
Yeah.
But here I am doing whatever I want. So, it's been an evolution from feeling like I would be invisible, literally, to realizing I could be visible. But, I had a grandma who said, dress her special early to my mom. And I always heard that story. But the irony is, I love clothing. I love dressing up. And so that wasn't on my mom's thing. My mom doesn't dress anything like I do. But it was it read my soul that I would just want to shine.
Yeah.
But it was very challenging growing up until I hit the stage of understanding that someone said to me, do you know that when people were born in, I think it was Alice Walker, because she's born blind in her left eye. I think I read it in her book. I'm not even Toni Morrison. So someone said, it was one of those two, but I think it was Alice Walker, though. Toni Morrison wrote The Bluest Eye, but I was always tuned into people who had eyes in their lyrics. But that if you're born blind in one of your eyes, you would be taken away in the village to the shaman. You'd be marked as a shaman, as a seer who's got vision in other worlds. And then when I heard that, I finally was like, why didn't someone tell me that earlier about me? Because it kind of forced me on a path, having the eye of looking at life a little differently, feeling like I was seeing differently than the way most of the world did. And so once I understood that, I started empowering myself with it. But it was a tough journey. At this point, when I smile a lot, I really believe that's my nature. But some people would be like, I don't notice because he's smiling. You have such a pretty smile. And then your eyes crinkle up. But that's not to block it. That's just my joy,
You can tell. You can
Yeah.
tell.
But I think some people say that to me, but some people, it's the first thing they'll say. And I'll be like, in fact, when I've coached or counseled people, I sometimes will say, so I'm blind in my eye. You can look at either eye. It doesn't matter. It's like a nose. I can't really tell where you're looking. So look whatever makes you feel comfortable. And some people, will sit with me for like 3 months before they even notice it. So it's funny how people see differently.
Yeah. Yeah, and you used a lot of metaphors in your description of that, of taking the stage, which is a very visible place,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then you also talked about the invisibility factor of it. What was your biggest breakthrough? When did it really shift for you from becoming what most might consider a handicap to this, like, "Oh, this is like might be my shaman's gift. That might be this is exactly what makes me special." Because 'Cause you've really, like, it just made it so it doesn't it actually propels you forward.
Yeah, it started happening in my 20s. I went to a pretty rad, a lot of rad introspection and a lot of real looking into the other worlds, if you will, in different
Yeah.
ways. And yeah, I really started seeing that. But it also, you know, now I look back at that, I'm like, everyone's got that. It's just your eye to the inner vision. I don't want to inflate myself. I'm no more, I am very intuitive though, and perhaps more than some, but I'm sure I don't think that necessarily has to do with my eye, but it did help me get in touch with my gift. But at one level, what I think it made me the most is more compassionate.
Mm.
I think it gave me a tremendous amount of compassion for people um and probably helped me become less like, because I like beauty, I probably like would have gone for like a more superficial life. I don't mean there's anything wrong with it, but it
No.
drew me to my deeper end, and threw me to do the work that I came here to do, maybe so I could support others. Not maybe, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's different breakthroughs. I hear you asking for one, and I'm like, gosh, there's this level where
Oh,
I
there's
realized
so
I'm a
many.
shaman, a seer, a healer, and I really saw that in my 20s. Like I knew that I had a lot of breakthroughs through different experiences I had where it was just so clear. But then I remember a different breakthrough I had literally when I turned 50 because I was never felt like I could. There's this local talent, like not talent, uh, fashion show
By
that
the way, that's gonna throw a bunch of people when they watch this when you say when I turned 50, because that do not look like most 50-year-olds.
well, and
Like,
I
way
credit
younger.
that all to the dance and to my complete commitment to staying alive, breathing, and feeling. I feel like a lot of what ages us and what makes us kind of shut down is checking out from ourselves. But when we stay on our path, like that's one thing I've done. I've really been passionately on my path this life of following what I'm meant to do, what I'm meant to offer. And I'm so lucky. I feel so grateful I've gotten to do that. And I don't feel my age. It's kind of I've just been owning it lately. I've been like, hey, this is kind of cool. You don't look your age. Wow. You don't feel not what age, it's consciousness, but it's not, you know.
So tell
So
me about the breakthrough you're going into, because I just got
oh, it
so
was just really
by
funny. I didn't this is such a silly story, but it was so profound for me. I didn't think I could have the confidence to walk in a fashion show. I just never felt that like confident, even though I knew I was attractive. I think it was really stemming from the eye. I was way back to you can't be on a stage. And I got on the stage and it was so old. It was such an old thing because I knew already, but there was something about putting on the heels and walking down a catwalk and feeling so incredibly powerful. In that moment, I literally had a boom. The entire room turned gold. And I was just hearing people cheering and it was hot. It was a giant, it was like a giant, I mean, this was a giant stage, thousands of people. It was like a wild, we have a great local community that does this. So anyways, giant, really fun. They make their own clothes, their own, it's a blast. But in any case, I had this revelation. And in that moment I heard like from the source itself, you could be on any stage, on any channel you want. It's all yours. You just needed to claim it. And it was so wild because my little girl was like, and my older self, my wise self knew, but that little one was just still like, really? Because we live in those little wounds we have. They stick around.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about that stage. It was a fashion show? Where was that?
So it's called the Chicoco Fashion Show, which was women's, about 5, 6 women who've been doing it for years in Chico, California. And it was at our local fairground. So we had a giant, fairgrounds. It was in the giant pavilion there. And they put it on and they get models of all ages and sizes, although it still tends to be more people's 20s and 30s. But they always pick a few people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, all different shapes and sizes, which is beautiful. I love that about it. So,
Okay, and that was that your first stage?
well,
It's a
no,
big one.
No, yeah, no, I mean, I danced on stages with my band in my 20s, all through my 20s and 30s, and I did a couple other things, and I've spoken, like, as a counselor, as a coach, like, I've spoken at places before. But that was, like, a stage where it was like, I guess done a few. I've done a few, and, like, right around 28, 29, I did a bunch then. So, but this was a different one. It was huge. It just had so many people. The energy was just, like, electric.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, so you've
yeah.
been getting on stages pretty much your whole life.
Well, I wouldn't say a lot of them. I guess I have, but what was different was the verbal, like when the TEDx came, telling it's one thing to act or to date. It's another thing to speak your truth and embody it on a stage. And I've, of course, I've been teaching classes in front of groups and workshops, but those are your room. It's not like a bunch of people who are hearing all sorts of things. Like they came because they knew they already want to see you. So you're already in the love fest that you've created for
I love that.
when you go to a cold stage and they're talking facts and TEDx and you're like, how did I get here? I don't know what just happened.
So tell us about that. How did you get there? What was that like?
Oh gosh, that was an amazing experience. My well, gosh, I mean, there's so many things to say to that without giving the whole story away for your listeners. There was an event that happened, and I had all this energy come back into me. And then my father, who had been ill most of my life, I knew it was his time to go, and I flew back to be with my
Mm,
mom and was with him. Like I was his home hospice alongside my mom for his death passage. And that process was a profound, intense experience for me that just cleared everything. And it's interesting. At his funeral, my family were like, "You missed your calling. You're a speaker. You're like a
wow.
spiritual facilitator." I'm like, "I already am doing that, but I heard you're a speaker." And then during my grieving time, I came back to California, and one day I was still like reflecting on my next steps in my own personal business process, and I just heard I just heard a voice saying, "You need to apply to a TEDx stage." And I really believe it was my father who loved TEDx. I didn't listen that much to TEDx. He was a TEDx fan. So it would never had crossed my mind. And I applied, and within 3 months I got accepted. I mean, it was against all odds. Against all odds. So,
Wow.
yeah. And I felt my father at that 100%. His spirit came, and this might sound strange, but I mean,
No, not at all. Go for it.
it was very profound. It was a very profound moment. I was so nervous. It was like between the break, I was in the second half, and I was like, went to the bathroom, and I knew this talk from head to toe. And that morning I woke up, I couldn't remember a thing. I was just like, what am I going to say? And I went to the bathroom while everyone was eating lunch, and I just sat in front of the mirror and talked to myself and talked to myself like, you can do this. And I came out and sat down, and they had a musical piece being played, like as the opening of the second act. It was gorgeous music. And during the music, it's like he came in and he filled up my spirit. I felt him 100% through the music. And he was like, "I'm with you. You're going to be amazing. You've got this. I'm totally with you. You're not alone. I'm so proud of you." And it's like, I felt it. Like it wasn't a thought. It was 100% shivers. I get shivers when certain things happen. I know it's like, woo, my intuition, like the feeling. And all of a sudden I remembered everything. I got calm and got out there and did it. It's common
Wow.
for that kind of experience.
Wow. So what has been I don't know if that takes the cake for thrilling experiences dealing from the stage, but what if that's not it, what's another or your top experience from stage when you're like, "Yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is my calling. I'm helping people." What was that like for you, and where was that?
I think my calling has always been supporting people. Like, I mean, I did feel it on the stage though. I mean, that I'm still getting used to the idea. Like I am being moved towards more and more stages, and I'm realizing how many more lives I can touch. I've touched a certain diaspora of people who already know what they're looking for. But the great thing about getting on stages is I speak to people who've never had the kinds of thoughts or consciousness I've had before. And I'm reaching people from all cultures and all tribes and all walks of life. And if knowing that I can touch lives that way I knew was my next step. It's like, how do I reach more people? I always used to say that there were like people who touched my life through books, actually, like in my early 20s and late teens. And if I hadn't read those books, I don't know if I'd be alive today because they spoke about things that no one was talking to me about that I needed to hear. And I don't
Y'all
think
heard that. If there's a book inside of you, write it because you might just save someone's life.
for sure. And if there's a story you need to tell on a stage, tell it because you might just save someone's life. Both of those things. And I realized I need to not just write my book, I need to get on stages because you can write a book. And these days, people don't necessarily read the books. No one reads books anymore. Or very
Oh,
few.
yeah. I have dozens of books on my
So-
shelf that I've never read, which violates a rule of mine. I might have to read them or get rid of them.
Right?
But I got your book. It's right over there on my bed. I've been digging through it, and the when we were talking yesterday, that book is like the body of 8 different books. Your story is so incredible. I mean, you just the one thing that you shared here that you've overcome with what you were born with, what you were gifted with when you were born, and then you go into like every chapter in your book, like the first 30 pages are this crazy thing happened, this crazy thing happened, and it's lifetimes of what I'll call trauma opportunities that you shifted into these gemstones of elegance that you adorn yourself with. And it's simply stunning the way that you've done that. And like I said, it's very intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. So
No.
let me ask you this. If people want to work with you,
Yes.
where should they go to find you?
You know what? I would just say jump right now onto www.jaciakornwise.com. I'm in the middle of well, actually, by the time this is played, my website will be rebooted, so it'll be up there.
Boom.
Or I have a Facebook group. You can find me on Facebook or Insta or LinkedIn. But I think I would love for them to jump on my website, or Facebook is also a great spot because there's lots of free gifts and ways to connect with me as well there too.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we put all of those links in the description of this show. So if you're watching, no matter where you are, especially if it's on YouTube, we'll have all of those links in the description. But I know that you've got a couple of books out. Could I petition you to gift them to the audience? Is that okay?
To gift them to the audience here?
At least one.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
several.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'll make that available. That's super generous of you. I know I kind of put you on to get a flavor for what it's like to go through the process you've been through and not have to go through the trauma to get there.
Mm.
And that's really the gift you are to the world. So I'm excited to hear. When is your next stage? Do you know what your next appearance is?
I do not know exactly what my next appearance is. We shall find out.
It might just be another podcast or another stage. Well, I better get an invitation is all I'm saying is when that happens. So
Well, I feel the same way about you because I just want to say, when I met you on that panel, there was a whole guest of wonderful speakers on the guest panel. And I had seen you the whole time and really liked your energy. And we'd said hello, but we hadn't really dropped in. And then I saw you speak and I was like, wow, I like that woman. I feel her. So I needed to talk. And I was so delighted we got to connect later
oh,
because I
amen.
just had no idea who you were and what a magnificent human you are. And
Oh, you're too
blow
kind.
your mind entrepreneur. Wow.
It's really cool. And you know this when you can make a career out of helping other people get better at what they do, and that's
Oh, I
like
do.
it just makes your cells sing to be able to do that. And you're like, yep, this is my passion. This is my purpose.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say about that is, I started getting tired of people not knowing me. People would always know me as the dancing woman rather than
Mm.
the counselor. And I thought, what is that about? And finally, someone looked at me and they said, because that's what you need to follow up with. That's your next step is become that, own it 100%. It's your gift. And everyone always, I knew it was my gift, but I didn't realize how important it was until I put the pieces together of how much it actually has saved my life and is saving all the lives of my students and clients and uh, how much I really believe in the medicine of it.
That's such a miracle. Oh my gosh. Well, Jacia, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really hope we
For
get to do
having
part 2,
me.
and I cannot wait to see you in person again whenever that blessing.
I know. Let's do it. I'm there.
Oh
Where?
man. Well, friends, make sure you check out the comments. Check out Jacia's work. You're going to want to get that book that she's generously handed out. And if you can find her and hang out with her digitally or in person, whenever that next event becomes available, Make sure you do that if that calls
Yeah.
to you.
This next course I'm offering, if I could just do a little
Tell
plug.
us. Yeah,
Oh
tell me
goodness,
about it.
I have this incredible 12-week daily course. It's online, with videos, it's content, meditations, visualizations. It's me. You don't do it alone because you're with me, but you get to do it in the privacy of your own space. It's called Rise Up and Dance, and it is a movement embodiment based coaching course to totally unstick your stuck point, whatever you're self sabotaging, however you're deprioritizing your self care. It's gonna in 12 weeks completely reboot you and open up your really inside knowledge to your next steps. It's a game changer. That's like my main thing I'm super excited about right now.
You know when that's coming out?
Yeah, it's out now. I'm
Oh,
relaunching
great.
it with my new website. I've already done a pre-launch, so it's already out there, but it's being rebooted right now on my new website, which means right now, as your listeners are listening, it is out. Yeah,
Good. It's available. Go check it out.
available. Yeah, I'll be on my website. Yeah.
We're gonna have to chat about some of the events that I'm doing coming up because I've got a student of mine who does reconnecting with yourself through voice, and what a cool event it would be to be able to have both you and her voice and body at the same time.
I would
Like,
love that.
cool, that would be
I'm in.
okay. I need to introduce you to
Let's talk
Christy.
about it.
Okay, she's awesome. Well, Jacia, thank you again for being here today. You're incredible. And friends, we will see you on the next episode of the Marianne Hickman Show. Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And of course, make sure you text me just directly with whatever questions you have about building your brand. You want to build your signature keynote presentation. Maybe you're at the stage where you need to get your ebook out and you need to help writing that. Let's do it all. Whatever you have questions with, wherever you're stuck, just text me 801-509-5495. Let's get this underway and make you some money with your message.